I've gathered together every generation of Nissan GT-R. So I've got the R32, the R33, the R34 and the R35. And in this video, I'm going to tell you the key things you need to know about them. I'm going to compare their exteriors, their interiors, and of course, what they like to drive. And yes, don't worry, I'm going to launch them as well. See how quick they are from 0 to 60 miles an hour and over the standing quarter mile. Because I'm Matt Watson and you're watching Car Wow. Buy, sell, Car Wow. Let's start this video at the beginning. Nissan's first ever four-wheel drive GT-R model. So it was based on the R32 generation of Skyline Coupe, and it was introduced in 1989. So over the standard Skyline, they added a body kit with an aggressive front bumper, bigger air intakes, widened wheel arches to accommodate that four-wheel drive system, larger wheels, though they do look tiny by today's standards. You've got a big wing at the back. This car actually has an extra carbon fiber wing, which is aftermarket, as is the big bucket exhaust. Other than that though, it is nice and standard. This is what the normal exhaust looks like. Another feature at the rear of the GT-R is that it has slightly different tail lamps than the normal Skyline. In 1995, the R33 GT-R was introduced. Same story again, take a Skyline Coupe and just make it look more aggressive. And they've actually increased how much more aggressive they've made it with the body kit. Got a huge grille. It's also the first GT-R to have the GT-R badge in the grille. Also, you get bigger alloy wheels compared to the previous generation and a spoiler that you can adjust. You have to do it manually, of course. Now this one is actually an official UK import and it has a special little air vent on the side of the front bumper for reasons, and a couple of reflectors and a fog light at the back. In 1999, the R34 version of the GT-R was introduced, and now Nissan are really getting the hang of making body kits that really differentiate the car from the standard Skyline on which it's based. It has an even more dramatic looking front than the previous generations. Bigger side skirts, bigger wheel arches, bigger wheels. The wing as well, rather than having the whole wing adjustable, it's a part of it at the back. The car also got a rear diffuser, though the one on this car is aftermarket, so it's slightly enlarged, as is the exhaust, as are the wheels, though they are the same size as the original, 18 inches. I think overall this is my favourite looking version of the GT-R. It just looks right and prices reflect that. This thing's worth £120,000. The R33, £70,000 and the R32, £45,000. In 2007, Nissan released the R35 generation of GT-R, and unlike all the others, it wasn't based on a normal everyday coupe. And as you can see, it's just way beefier, bigger and more extreme than what came before, because essentially the designers just had a free rein to do what they wanted to do. Over the years it's been tweaked ever so slightly, but it hasn't changed all that much. Obviously this is the Nismo version, so it is a bit more extreme, so you've got some added aero, carbon fibre bits and a huge rear wing made out of carbon fibre. It's not adjustable like on the R34, but who cares, everything else is just bigger and crazier. For instance, you've got 4 exhaust pipes and they're massive. Wheel sizes up to 20 inches. Also, for the first time ever, you have the GT-R badge on the wings, whereas on the older cars, they have a GT badge for some bizarre reason. Anyhow, this is a 2016 model year car, and the value of this today is £120,000, so exactly the same as the R34. Here we have one of the very best things about the Nissan Skyline GT-R. Its world famous RB26 engine. Now a lot of people think that RB stands for race bred. Doesn't actually, it's just a letter designation. The 26 does stand for something though. 2.6 litres, straight 6, twin cam, 24 valve, and the important bit, twin turbo. The result is 280 horsepower and 353 newton meters of torque. Now, back in the day, there was a gentleman's agreement in Japan that performance cars couldn't put out more than 280 horsepower, but the reality is that this engine puts out around 300 horsepower. You can tune them up quite easily though. Without any major mods, you'll be able to get around 500 horsepower out of one of these things. For the engine, over 1,000 horsepower is possible. For the R33 generation, Nissan completely changed the engine. Actually, they didn't. It's the exact same 2.6 litre, 280 horsepower. Gentleman's agreement, remember. However, in reality, this one was putting out about 320 horsepower because it had new ceramic turbos, a bit more torque. 368 newton meters. Other than that, identical. The R34 generation of Skyline GT-R was supposed to have a V6, but Nissan ran out of money, so they just painted it red to keep people happy, and that was enough because everyone loved this engine. Still supposed to have 280 horsepower, but it didn't. Once again, the gentleman's agreement was slightly ignored. This one apparently puts out 340 horsepower as standard, thanks to, once again, some new bearings in the turbos. Torque, 392 newton meters. For the R35 GT-R, Nissan finally had enough cash for their V6, and what a V6. 3.8 litres, twin turbo, completely crazy. In 2007, the car's engine put out 480 horsepower. The very last GT-R had 565 horsepower, but this Nismo, it's tuned all the way up to 600 horsepower and 652 newton meters of torque. The engine, look, it has a little plaque on it to say it's been hand built by someone whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Anyway, it's this person there. I wonder where Nissan got the idea of having an engine signed. Anyway, this thing is so fast. We're going to see how quick all these cars are in a moment when I launch them. But before that, shall we just have a listen to how they each sound? Now I'm going to see what these GT-Rs are like to drive. So the key thing about the R32 is that it introduced the brilliant Ateza ETS all-wheel drive system. So normally the car is running in rear-wheel drive mode, but you've got an electronically controlled central differential, and that can send 50% of the engine's torque to the front wheels if the rear starts to slip. And that means that if you start to lose traction at the rear when you're coming out of a corner, boom, power goes to the front really quickly, and the car can just pull you out of a turn. It can also help pull you straight if you start to slide. And the system is really impressive, especially for its day. In fact, it's so impressive that this car absolutely dominated in the Japanese touring cars in the early 90s. And when they took it to Australia and ran it in Bathurst, it absolutely destroyed the competition, that the Australians got really annoyed and banned the car. They said, oh no, from now on, all cars entering have to be rear-wheel drive V8. And in the end, the rest of the world sort of followed suit and disallowed all-wheel drive from touring car. Another technology highlight of the GT-R is its rear wheel steering. To think this car, it's an early 90s car, has rear wheel steering, it's pretty impressive. It just helps get the car turning into corners. It also aids stability as well. And in fact, this car is pretty high tech when you think about it. So you've got multi-link rear suspension and double wishbone at the front. Porsche 911s, even now, today, they don't have double wishbone suspension at the front. Only the new GT3 does. You know what? There's something about old cars that they just have a load of feel to them. You can just get them moving around beneath you when you just turn into a corner. That it makes it just really playful. The grip levels are a lot lower, which actually means a lot of fun on the road. Oh, I like it. But the thing I like the most is just the noise from this exhaust. It's so good. Now in the R33, and yes, it feels very similar indeed. So changes are very minimal. In fact, back in the day, in 1995, people complained that Nissan just didn't do enough to change the car. It's pretty much the same chassis underneath, same all-wheel drive system. They have tweaked the suspension slightly, so now you have slightly stiffer springs at the front and slightly softer at the rear than the R32. However, this is a V-spec car, so you get stiffer suspension all around. Also, the V-spec model's got an electronically controlled rear differential as well as that electronically controlled central differential. And you do notice that diff. It really helps you just keep on the power when the car starts to slide. I think the diff of this V-spec does make a big difference. Loving it. All right then, R34. Virtually unchanged from the R33. They did make the suspension a little bit stiffer in the rear. So for the 33 they made it softer, and then for this they made it stiffer. Could make up their mind. Other than that though, not much difference. Well, apart from the fact that we now have a 6-speed rather than a 5-speed gearbox like you get in the R32 and R33. It's got a nice shift on it, but I think the shift in the earlier two cars of the 5-speed is slightly nicer. Although it is nicer when you're on the motorway, something to have a 6th gear to go into to stop the droning. Once again, this particular version is the V-spec, so it benefits from the stiffer suspension all round over the standard car and that electronically controlled limited slip differential on the rear axle. It just helps you manage the car when you're accelerating out of bends. What this car really benefits from though is the seat. So when you're hurling it around, you really do appreciate the fact that they hold you in place. So cool. Okay then, R35 GT-R. While all the previous GT-Rs are pretty much the same cars but with different bodywork, this is entirely different. In fact, rather than being based on a coupe, like tuning it up and having a clever all-wheel drive system, this one just thought, you know what, let's just build a bespoke car that can take on supercars. So this car, once again, has an all-wheel drive system, which they called a Tesla, what have you, but it's completely different. You have carbon fibre prop shafts and drive shafts. You have a limited slip diff at the back and one at the front. It's absolutely nuts the way this thing can put its power down. And to drive, it just feels so much more extreme, so much more on it, so much grippier, so much crazier. It's almost like it's 5 generations ahead compared to the other cars. It's an absolute animal. Obviously you've got more power, a lot more grip, so to get it moving about beneath you is so much harder. And while it'll blow your mind with what it can do, on the roads sometimes it's not as playful, it's not as much fun, it's just so serious and aggy and just like, come on then, come on, I'm gonna do ya. That's how we talk sometimes after a drink in the Midlands. Another thing with this car, unlike the others which are manuals, this is a 6-speed dual clutch auto, and it's got a transaxle gearbox for improved weight distribution, and my god, the shifts are quick. Also, you've got adaptive dampers, you can change the stability control. The other cars didn't have stability control, and you can alter how aggressive the all-wheel drive system is. This, obviously being the Nismo, has taken things up a notch still. So you have even stiffer suspension, even bigger brakes, and some more aero. Actually, throughout the life of the R35 GT-R, from 2007 onwards, they kept on tweaking it, evolving it, giving it a bit more power, messing around with the suspension and all that kind of stuff, just to keep it at the top of its game. Yeah, it's getting on now, but it's still such an amazing machine. They've just taken it off sale in the UK, and it's a bit of a sad day, and I'm definitely looking forward to see what it's replaced with. Come on, the R36! Now let's compare these cars' interiors. So the R32, as you imagine, feels quite old on the inside, and over the standard Skyline you've got a GT-R steering wheel, you've got some sporty seats, you've got some special gauges, and one very special gauge here in the instrument binnacle which shows how much torque is going to the front wheels. This car actually has some aftermarket dials, and even though they say kmh, the reading works out to be in miles per hour, though that doesn't mean it goes all the way up to 320 miles an hour. Anyhow, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to turn your notifications on. That way you won't miss any uploads and videos such as this. The R33's interior really doesn't feel any more modern than the R32's. It has very similar sport seats actually. However, you do now get a driver's airbag, though we've lost the GT-R badging off the steering wheel. You do get GT-R badging here on the rev counter and here on the centre console, but for some reason they've moved the front torque gauge down here, so it's harder to see. It is next to the oil temperature gauge and the turbo boost gauge. It's always good to be looking away from the road when you're boosting, right? Here in the R34, you don't have to take your eyes so far off the road to check out all your gauges, because they're now all housed in this multi-function LCD display, which is really, really advanced when this car was released. There's even a button there for the TV, but it doesn't work because we're not in Japan. Yeah, and this is a Japanese import, as signified by what's showing on this aftermarket infotainment system there. The sat-nav is thinking we're still in Tokyo, when we're not. Anyhow, all this tech and the general design makes this car just feel way more modern than the other two. The steering wheel, the instruments, the silver panelling here, and these sport seats, which are just a big step up. Here on the inside, the R35 is quite different to the other GT-Rs. It just feels a lot more cocooned, a lot more serious. The sport seats are more aggressive. The layout of the dash is just chunkier. Needless to say, since the car was first introduced in 2007, the interior has evolved slightly, but the overall structure and idea has remained the same. This being the Nismo, it does have some extra upgrades, such as an Alcantara steering wheel, Nismo badging here and down here, also Alcantara on the dash, and these rather lovely Recaro sport seats. This R32 GT-R is supposed to do 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds, so I'm going to launch it to see what I can get out of it. I'm not going to dump the clutch, right? I'm just going to take it smoothly because it's an owner's car. Here we go though. Come on, turbos. Oh, the sound. Oh, 7.12. What's the quarter mile? 15.55. Yeah, this thing can go all the way to 156 miles an hour, unless it's Japanese import, and then 180 kilometers an hour. They limited them in Japan, but you can bypass that. Oh, this aftermarket exhaust. Oh, it is worth it for that alone. Okay, R33. Same deal, but the 0 to 60 time falls to 5.4 seconds. Well, that's the official one. It'll be higher than that with me. Bit more torque than the R32. Let's see what I can do. Come on, get on boost. Oh, we have the boost. Oh, nice chirrup when I change up. 6.63 to 60. I'll take that. Come on, what's the quarter mile? 15.01. Now for the R34. It's supposed to do 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds, but I'm not sure I'm going to do that. Let's just see what happens. Come on. Oh, come on, baby. 6.89 to 60. Oh. Didn't manage to go quite as quick as I did in the R33. Finally, we come to the R35 Gt-R, and it's supposed to do 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, which is just nuts. And if the car underperforms, it's nothing to do with me and my poor launch or my clutch control. Nothing to do with that at all, because the car is taking care of everything. I'm just going to left foot brake, floor the throttle, release the brake. 3.32 to 60. Though it was going sideways for a bit, lost traction. Mind you, despite that, spinning up its wheels, it still did a quarter mile in 11.27 seconds. Wow, I guess that's what you call progress. Time for a brake test from 60 miles an hour. Here we go, full emergency stop. What's it going to be? How long did it take to stop? 36 meters, bless it. Oh God. Okay, brake test in the R33 from 60 miles an hour. We have ever so slightly bigger brakes than the R32. Will that matter? Let's find out. Braking now. Worth. Took 40 meters. Brake test time. Brakes are completely unchanged compared to the R33. Car's a bit heavier. What difference is that going to make? Here we go. I'm going to brake from 60 miles an hour. That felt way better. Stopped in 32 meters, which is actually pretty blooming good. Way better than the R33. All right, let's check the braking on the R35. Okay, here we go. Full emergency stop now. Emergency stop face. 32 meters, same as the R34 then. That's not progress for you. Actually, I'm being silly. If you're on a track, smashing it over and over again, this car's brakes will hold up way better. Way better. Right, let's wrap this up. What you want to know now is which of these cars is my favourite, and obviously it's this one. I love the R34. It's got the looks, it's really nice to drive, it's got sufficient performance for use on the road. It's a thing of beauty and it's worth a lot of money. This is the one I'd like to take home. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. If you want to watch some more videos, click on the windows, and if you click on that box there, you can go to Car Wow, Silly Car. Just upload some photos, give a brief description, and our dealers will bid on your car to make sure you get a great price for it. See you next time.